circling the city. Tonight, the mayor of Irpin outside Kyiv saying 50% of his city has been destroyed by Russian bombardment. The mayor of Chernihiv saying his city has been under, quote, colossal attack. So what happened to Russia's claims that it would drastically reduce its attacks on Kyiv and Chernihiv? And through all of the destruction, what's happening with the man behind it? Well, U.S. officials say that Vladimir Putin's been misinformed by his own Ministry of Defense. Apparently, he didn't even know how badly the Russian military is doing in Ukraine.
We would concur with the conclusion that Mr. Putin has not been fully informed by his Ministry of Defense at every turn over the last month.
Well, the head of British intelligence saying that Russian soldiers are refusing to carry out orders, they're sabotaging equipment, even accidentally shooting down their own aircraft. I want to bring in CNN's Hala Garani now live for us in Lviv. Hala, hello to you. Thank you so much for getting this new video in from the town of Sloboda, which is roughly 12 miles from Chernihiv. We're told the Ukrainian forces are back in control. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and you can see, as we've been reporting over the last few weeks, that really these major battles are happening on the outskirts of Kyiv. They're not hitting the center, but they are absolutely brutal. They're brutal on the civilian population, and they're taking a huge toll also on Russian troops. We've seen that the army of Vladimir Putin is taking some big losses and big setbacks. And as you mentioned, officials in the UK and in the US intelligence agencies saying that there are reports that some of the army troops are refusing to follow orders, and also in one case accidentally shooting an aircraft. What does this mean for Zelensky?
And sabotaging their own equipment.
Sabotaging their own equipment. And we've seen video as well. We can't verify the authenticity of all of it, but of some troops actually hitchhiking away from some of the positions that they were ordered to go to. Let's listen to, though, Volodymyr Zelensky, because it's an act of defiance in itself to address the world from the very center of the capital that Vladimir Putin wanted to take in some sort of blitz operation. This is what he said just a few hours ago about Russian promises to de-escalate military activity around Kyiv and the north.
Yes, we have a negotiations process, but they're only words without anything concrete. We will not give anything away, and we will fight for every meter of our land.
Yeah, we'll fight for every meter of our land. And it's interesting to see him there at night in the center of the capital, Kyiv. Yeah.
We've been noticing that when because it runs during a time that we have a break, so we can see it. I'm sure it's not live. But usually around 11:30 at night or so, it comes out, and it's surprising to see that he's right in his, his office or the building, the Capitol building. And
it's happening as the important thing, though, to note is I was speaking to Cedric Layton, who you know well, and we talk to him often, and he said something that really stayed with me. He said, look, the Western countries and the Western alliance has a watch, but the Russians have a calendar. In other words, if there is a setback around Kyiv and these parts of the country now, it doesn't mean that this is a drawback that signals that they will allow Ukraine to retain control of these territories that Vladimir Putin has his eye on. They have a long-term view of this conflict.
It's just, in Mariupol, we've been seeing the horrendous video, and you saw the Red Cross building, right?
It's just unbelievable. These are buildings that have been clearly marked, in this case, clearly marked with a Red Cross symbol. This comes after the maternity hospital bombing. This comes after a theater that was used by 1,300 civilians for shelter, bombed and gutted, at least 300 people killed. And now this Red Cross building and facility targeted. Mariupol is not Kyiv. Mariupol is full of Russian-speaking Russian ethnics. This is the city that Vladimir Putin said he was liberating, quote unquote, from neo-Nazis. And this is what he's doing to it.
Thank you, Hala. We'll see you back here in just a little bit. I want to turn now to CNN's Christiane Amanpour, who visited a town on the outskirts of Kyiv today, a town getting pummeled by Russian airstrikes.
Missiles have struck the town of Brovary, a suburb of eastern Kyiv, twice in the last week alone. This tangled, jagged mass of metal and cladding is what's left of a massive warehouse that stored food, paper, and the beer and alcohol that's no longer allowed to be consumed under martial law. This happened at almost exactly the same time that the Russians were announcing their de-escalation around Kyiv. This missile struck right here Imagine the good fortune of the truck driver who was loading up to take crates and packages and boxes of food and supplies to the supermarkets in this town and also to Kyiv. He managed to survive. We are told 3 workers were killed, but Brovary has never fallen to Russian forces. Directly west of here, Russian and Ukrainian troops have been fiercely fighting over the town of Irpin, and now it does appear that the Russians are retreating from here. A clear indication that this war around Kyiv has simply not gone the way Russia planned. Whatever the reason, Moscow says it's retrenching. Their intercepted radio conversations, verified by the New York Times, show their soldiers in distress from the very start.
Мне необходима остро дозаправка, вода, продукты. Я тебе на прием.
This was west of the capital in Makariv in the very first days of the war, already signaling the focus on civilians once their own so-called properties were out of harm's way.
Принято решение убрать первое хозяйство от населенного пункта и накрыть населенный пункт артиллерией. Прием.
This security video shows a Russian armored vehicle just blowing up a car, instantly killing the elderly couple inside. Ukraine has lost its fighters too. Here in the Brovary cemetery, Boris the caretaker shows us freshly dug graves. This guy, this soldier died on the very first day of the war.
Да.
It's raining, it's drizzling here today. It's almost as if this city is crying as it mourns its war dead, because all of these graves are for the fighters of this place who've fallen in combat since this war began. This grave has been dug, but the family can't yet bury their son, a soldier who was fighting in a village 15 kilometers away, but's held by the Russians. They haven't yet been able to get his body released. And even Boris's heart breaks when he tells me about a father who's just lost his son, his only child, and who asked, "What do I have to live for now?" Christiana Manpour, CNN, Brovary, Ukraine.
Thanks very much for that, Christian. I want to turn now to CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton for what is next in this fight. Colonel, hello to you. The Pentagon says about 20% of Russia's forces that had been moving against Kyiv are repositioning now, with some heading to Belarus, likely to resupply and probably deploy elsewhere in Ukraine. How does that happen in an active battlefield?
Yeah, that's very difficult, Don. Good evening to you. The Belarusian border is right here in north of Kyiv, right in this area right here. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to go this way to replenish their supplies. The problem that they're going to have, though, is they're going to have to transverse areas that the Ukrainians are active in right now. And if if the past is prologue in this particular case, you're going to see a lot of action on the way back for these troops on their way back to Belarus or even to Russia, which is just right here. So it's going to be a very problematic thing for them to do, Don, and I don't know that they can actually pull it off. They couldn't really pull it off coming into Kiev, and it's going to be very hard for them to pull off any type of withdrawal, as sparse as it will be, to go back to Belarus or to Russia.
Colonel, the UK intelligence chief says that Russian soldiers' morale is so low that some are refusing to carry out orders. They're sabotaging their own gear, even accidentally shooting down their own aircraft. How bad is command and control if they're shooting down their own aircraft?
It's really bad. That is almost a cardinal sin in warfare, when you shoot your own aircraft down and when you have what is called combat fratricide. This is a very significant issue for the Russians, because every single thing that they end up doing is really postulated on them being able to have a synchronized plan of operations. But when they do things like this, when they shoot down their own aircraft, have morale problems like this, they actually are losing that synchronicity of operations. And what that means is they are not moving forward in a fashion that is in concert with any type of plan that I've ever worked with. And it certainly is not in concert with any objectives that any rational military force would have. So it's very detrimental to the Russian war plan.
Mariupol is getting obliterated by Russian forces firing from the Sea of Azov. If the city is just days from falling, does that mean the Russians' next target will be Odessa?
That is very likely. Of course, Mariupol is over here and Odessa is over here in the western part of the country. But if Mariupol is taken, and that's, I think almost a certainty given the type of destruction that we see there and the types of activity that we're seeing in this part of Ukraine, it's pretty clear that the Russians will want to move to the west from Kherson and also try something from the sea. There are, it's basically a blockade. There are about 22 ships still, Russian ships still in the Black Sea. Many of them have the capacity to send cruise missiles into Odessa or to any other place that they can target from the Black Sea. And so it's highly likely that the port area of Odessa, because it is Ukraine's main port, the third largest city, it is highly likely that this is going to be next on their list. So it really calls into question the idea that the Russians are retrenching or doing things differently than they have for the first phase of the war.
A human rights group says that Russian forces have used banned anti-personnel mines in the eastern Kharkiv region. What can you tell us about these weapons, Colonel?
So these weapons are among the most heinous weapons of war. Anti-personnel mines, as distinct from anti-tank mines, come in basically two varieties, blast mines and fragmentation mines. Here's an example of a mine, and if you look very carefully, you can see the top part of it is here, and the buried part is right here. It's partially buried and partially concealed by what looks like broken up asphalt in this area. The main purpose of these anti-personnel mines is to maim people, to wound them severely, to blow off limbs, and to do things that really are prevented by many of the rules of war. If you remember, Princess Diana had this as a very big effort before she passed away, and this is something that there is an international treaty that governs these mines, but the United States, Russia, China, Israel, and a few other nations don't abide by that treaty.
Colonel, thank you so much. We'll see you again tomorrow.
You bet, Don. Thank you.
The suburb of Irpin under fire today. I mean, listen to that. Those explosions rocking the town, and the video you're about to see is very graphic. Rescue teams carrying the bodies of people killed in the strikes. Hard to watch, but important to see the true cost of this war. Let's bring in now Kira Rudik. She is a member of the Ukrainian parliament. Kira, we appreciate you joining us. It's horrific scenes playing out. I mean, we see the video, but this is happening in real time, in real life. Russia may claim that troops are moving away from Kyiv, but you say that the shelling in Ukraine's capital is worse than ever. What has it been like for you?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. So this night was also heavy in Kyiv. There was intensive shelling, and which means that Russians may be retreating on the ground where we are fighting them very well, but they continue destroying and killing us in the air. This is just another example of the way that they're fighting this war without any mercy, without any rules, and obviously not keeping their word if even they are giving one. So what you have seen in the outskirts of the city is just one example of what is happening throughout the country. And this is obviously extremely hurting that at some point we will have to rebuild all of this. At some point we will understand the total destruction that was made and the amount of people whose lives were destroyed, the amount of people who were killed by this war. It goes without speaking that our main goal right now is to make sure that we keep our people safe and we don't lose more and more civilians. But what we see right now that Russians specifically are targeting civilians, and probably the worst thing that you can do is to put that red cross on the building the worst thing that you can do for your city is to say, oh, it's children here, they are located right here, because that would be exactly the thing that Russians would hit next to cause more devastation. For the last couple of weeks, we have seen that they are targeting specifically two types of buildings. The first ones would be the civilian buildings that they are sure where the children or women or wounded are. And the second one would be the storages of gas and oil. So we would know that comes next. First is more and more destruction. And second, that Ukraine at some point will be just out of the resources and ability to fuel our army and fuel our vehicles. So we are strategically getting ready to fixing that. However, again, and I will repeat it once again, on the 36th day of war, until we get the support in the air that we require, until we get the fire jets, until we get the Air Force protection, it will be extremely hard for us to win this war.
If you can't believe anything the Russians say, how can any type of agreement come out of these talks, and how does this war end?
Well, the only idea of this agreement in my heart is that we still continue getting people out of the siege city. So Russians are using right now getting the humanitarian convoys out as a bargaining chip, which, okay, just let people out because they're dying of starvation. But to get to the peace, we would need the security guarantees from the Western countries, this is for sure. There is no agreement one-to-one with Russia. We know that they will break their word. But if we get the security guarantees from NATO countries, from other countries, we already received confirmation from Turkey that they will definitely support us in these guarantees, that they will be in written, and these guarantees will definitely help us to push Russia away, then this peace may happen. However, once again, that needs to be not only just a couple of countries, it needs to be like new global security agreement, new global security setup that will allow us at some point to push Russians back to Russia and then make sure that they will never come back again.
Kira Rudik, a member of Ukrainian parliament. Thank you. Be safe. We appreciate you joining us. And we have more breaking news tonight. President Biden weighing releasing a record amount of oil from U.S. reserves, about 1 million barrels a day. The price of oil has spiked during the war in Ukraine. The announcement could reportedly come as soon as tomorrow. Vladimir Putin's brutal invasion of Ukraine shocking the world, but is what's happening in Ukraine history repeating itself now? Chechnya, Syria, the country of Georgia. Putin has taken what he wants. Will he be stopped this time?
Shahira Yahya is the co-founder of Chitosan Egypt, a biotech startup that creates what they say are fully organic farming products from shrimp shells. Every year, Egypt discards thousands of tons of shrimp waste, an abundant resource that holds the key ingredient for Shahira's products, chitosan.
Chitosan isn't a new concept at all. It's been around since the 1800s. You can find it on land through insects, in the sea in the form of lobsters and shrimps.
Chitosan Egypt breaks away minerals from shells to extract the chitosan, then dries and grinds it, turning it into an organic product to be used for farming, replacing man-made synthetic fertilizers that can be harmful to the environment.
Chitosan fertilizers and pesticides target over 70 pests in 25 strategic crops.
The agriculture sector is Egypt's second largest source of revenue, accounting for more than 11% of the country's economy. Shahira has a mission to not only make the sector more organic, but affordable for farmers.
We empower farmers to grow cleaner agriculture, and we are 20% cheaper than competitors.
A greener product that promises a cleaner and more profitable future for Egypt's farmers.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 70,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
Unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
Our engine continues, our impetus, our momentum.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers. Give me the facts on voter fraud.
There has never been a moment where voter fraud has affected the outcome of an election.
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
Normally this theatre would be filled with people and art and debate and energy. And so now we have to rely on the two of us.
How interesting is it to be Tyler Mitchell today? It's crucial we make sense of what's happening. There seems to be some confusion that maybe you can clear up. Where are the US forces in Syria going? And fully understand what's at stake.
What's happening now in the world is a great thing because people are talking about subjects they never did before.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
We are now in a major point of flux from being a telco into being a techco. And I think we're not the only big company that is looking at it. We are moving it really into a time where we're looking into consumer digital products, enterprise digital products, and really looking at providing solutions, not just providing connectivity.
Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus. Fact versus fiction.
The Biden administration believes Vladimir Putin's been misinformed by his defense officials about how poorly the Russian military is doing in Ukraine. How that ultimately impacts the invasion remains to be seen. But keen observers of Putin will tell you he's been flexing Russia's military muscles for more than 2 decades. More tonight from CNN's Matthew Chance.
Russian troops fresh from battle cruising through the devastated streets of a deserted city, virtually leveled by rockets and artillery fire. You can see the apartment blocks in the background reduced to rubble. It could easily be Ukraine in the past few weeks, but this is footage from 22 years ago in Chechnya, a breakaway Russian region brutally suppressed by the Kremlin, an early glimpse of how uncompromising Vladimir Putin would be.
The almost unanimous opinion of these soldiers is that if he's elected on Sunday, Vladimir Putin will make a strong president to lead this country and its armed forces.
At the time, he vowed to chase terrorists to the toilet and wipe them out in the outhouse. He later expressed regret for those words, but not the actions. Europe's first war of the 21st century was also Putin's war. The tiny Georgian enclave of South Ossetia was a backwater of the former Soviet Union. But it was here that Putin got a taste for violating international boundaries, intervening to support the breakaway region, pounding Georgian forces and rolling his tanks across the border.
Well, there's been a lot of speculation about where the Russian troops are. Well, here they are. Well, inside Georgian territory and outside the main conflict zone of South Ossetia. The big question is, How far will they go?
Then, as now, the invasion provoked international scorn. But just after the short Georgia war, Putin seemed confident relations with the West would endure.
Do you think that this is a turning point in relations between Russia and the West? Do you think that period of post-war calm has come to an end?
I think no. I hope no.
He was right. A Western backlash against a resurgent Russia never came. Until this. In 2014, protesters toppled a pro-Russian president in neighbouring Ukraine, and Putin moved quickly to secure Russian interests.
Well, astonishing developments in Crimea, because without a shot being fired, Russia has moved into the Ukrainian territory and, despite international condemnation, effectively brought it under its control.
Sanctions followed, but so too did an unstoppable wave of nationalism. President Putin, the victor of Crimea, had for many Russians restored a sense of pride.
We understand that it is not about the territory which we have enough of. It is about historical roots of our spirituality and statehood. It is about what makes us a nation and a united, unified nation.
Soon, Putin unleashed his growing military swagger even further afield. The shock and awe of Russian airstrikes in Syria propped up the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Each missile helping to change the course of the Syrian conflict and sending a potent message of Russian resurgence.
Well, this really does feel like the centre of a massive Russian military operation. The air is filled with the smell of jet fuel, and the ground shudders with the roar of those warplanes returning from their bombing missions.
Now the missiles and the roars are being heard once again. And Putin's destruction in Chechnya, then Georgia, then Syria, is now being visited on Ukraine. Of course, he's ridden out tough sanctions and international condemnation before. But this time, it's unclear how much support Putin has at home.
This is one of those Russian Soviet-era vehicles which is completely burned out.
And given painful Russian losses on the battlefield, it's unclear too whether he will now double down as he has in the past, or back down like never before. Matthew Chance, CNN.
Thank you, Matthew. It's an incredible report there. If Vladimir Putin's been misinformed by his advisors, what's he doing now to know the truth, right? How's it going to get out? And why is former President Trump still asking Putin, who has been called a war criminal, to do him political favors?
Immerse yourself in the culture of Azerbaijan.
As technology increases, so do the way child sex offenders communicate. My name is Guillermo Galarza. I am the Director of Global Partnerships and Trainees at the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Right now, sex offenders can't travel because of the travel restrictions. So they're now using third-party merchants and cryptocurrencies to have other children in other parts of the world get abused, and in turn they pay them with these digital currencies. In 2019, there were close to 17 million reports of online child sexual exploitation. In 2020, that number went up to 21 million. There's been a significant increase in reporting of online child sexual exploitation. And why? Because children are more than ever, they're spending time at home. They're spending time on their mobile devices. They're going to school virtually. At IPMEC, we want to make sure that law enforcement and all the multidisciplinary stakeholders are equipped with the technology, the tools, and the know-how so they can protect children online.
For World Sport.
World Sport.
For World Sport, I'm Amanda Davis.
I'm Patrick Snell. I'm Alex Thomas.
I'm Coy Wire.
I'm Don Riddell.
I'm Andy Scholl.
And this is CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels, connected to your world.
This is the result of one single blast.
3.3 million Ukrainians have now fled this country.
You don't have to go far to find a family who has been displaced.
We just heard an air raid siren ring out.
We run down to cover. It is hard to imagine life returning here.
In Kiev, Dnipro,
Poland.
This is CNN.
I'm Phil Black in Lviv, Western Ukraine, and this is CNN.
Misinformed, that's how a U.S. official characterizes the information Vladimir Putin's getting from his advisors about how badly the Russian military is performing in Ukraine. That official going on to say, quote, his senior advisors are too afraid to tell him the truth. So someone who's not afraid to tell the truth is our counterterrorism analyst, Philip Mudd. Phil, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us. Look, Russia clearly looks like it made some big missteps, and now we're learning about this intelligence. What do you think? And would it even make any difference in Vladimir Putin's choices if they were telling him the truth?
I'm not sure it would, but I doubt the truth is penetrating the inner circle. I think Americans are way too optimistic on this. I am not. Let's look at some of the pieces around anybody like Vladimir Putin, whether you're in North Korea, whether you're in Russia, whether you're in Iran. You just mentioned one of the pieces, Don. That is the inner circle is not going to tell him the truth. Let's take another piece, the media. When he turns on the TV, what's he seeing? Russian-controlled media that, as we know over the past few months, has eliminated any sense of dissent. What are the Russian people seeing? The same thing Putin would be seeing when he turns on the TV. We are winning. What is a junior officer seeing in the military? This is really important when you're thinking about things like morale and the will to move, to continue to move against the Ukrainians. They're seeing or hearing what their superiors are telling them, which is the same thing Putin is saying, the same thing the leadership is saying, the same thing as the media is saying. I think the Westerners, like us, want to believe that Putin might be seeing reality. Don, I'm doubtful.
Now, so why is it so hard to get into his inner circle? Like, what is that all about? And to get accurate information from them?
I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one is fear. Obviously, if you look at what's happened at political opposition, what's happened to journalists, what's happened, as I mentioned, the past couple of months to journalists who want to present a different view, they will be eliminated. I think that's too simplistic, though. Let me add a different layer of sophistication to that. People in the inner circle watch liberals leave. You saw the environmental minister leave a few weeks ago, and they're going to say, that's an indication that we should reconsider what we're thinking. They're going to say those are people who don't believe in the reestablishment of the real Russia. Those are people who are weak. Those are people who are liberals. We shouldn't listen to them. When they leave, that reaffirms that only the strong survive and only the strong stay. I think it's a real indication, what we're seeing now, of what we've seen in other totalitarian regimes. The inner circle says they're right, and nobody else can get within that circle, Don.
All right, let's talk about America. The U.S. has been open about a lot of the intel it has on Russia from the very get-go, essentially telegraphing Russia's every move. A lot of it has turned out to be true, like Russia's initial invasion. What do you think the U.S. is trying to do by releasing all this intel publicly?
Boy, I'm finding this really interesting. As a guy who used to protect secrets, watching the secrets roll out the door, there's a couple things going on. The first generation of intelligence a few weeks ago was trying to unify the Europeans, saying, we see every move. Don't be confused by these moves. Don't be persuaded by Putin. He's building up troops. He's going to move in. That intel was very good. Now we're seeing a different kind of intelligence trying, I think, to sow dissent within Putin's inner circle, talking about things like differences between defense officials and Putin. I think this is fascinating. I don't think it hurts American intelligence because you don't know where this stuff came from, so you can't figure out how to root it out. But be clear, the intel is transition. How to unite Europeans, how to slowly, maybe, I'm not sure it'll work, but maybe sow dissent among the people who have to support Putin, not only in Ukraine, but for years ahead.
Why do you think, what has happened, how do I want to say this? Our intelligence on, the so-called Great Russian Army. Everyone was around the world so afraid of the vaunted Russian army. And then we see what is happening. I mean, you have this small country, quite frankly, Ukraine, holding back this enormous army. What happened? Why did we think that the Russians were so powerful, had such a powerful military?
Finally, somebody asked me this question after like 2 months. Finally, I've been waiting for this forever. Let me give you a simple explanation.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Don Lemon. There's two pieces in any intelligence problem. What somebody can do, that is capabilities. How many tanks they got, how many armored personnel carriers, how many people. What somebody can do, that's capabilities. Let's take another basket. What they will do and what they want to do. If you went into Ukraine 2 months ago, could you have guaranteed that the Ukrainians would have had the will to resist like that? I'm not talking about tanks. I'm not talking about planes. And could you have guaranteed that the Russians, even with their expertise in tactics, with their military manpower, with their tanks, that they would not have the will and the morale to proceed? The hardest thing in intel is getting in somebody's brain. We might have under-anticipated how tough the Ukrainians were and overestimated whether the Russians would move on. I don't think this is an intel failure. I think it's a classic case of trying to get in somebody's brain and failing. We didn't know what they thought, and the Ukrainians showed us. They're going to fight.
Thank you very much for that.
Thanks for asking, Don. Finally, thank you.
Hey, but I've been wanting to know. Everybody wants to know. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate it. I'll see you soon. You be well. Yeah. From a coffee shop and a bar to a refugee shelter, I met with a young journalist here in Lviv, doing everything she can to help her fellow Ukrainians find a place to stay.
I'm Larry Madowo in Kilifi, Kenya, and this is CNN.
Christiana Manpour in Amsterdam, Jerusalem, Sarajevo, Afghanistan. I'm Christiana Manpour in Iran. Christiana Manpour, CNN, with elements of the Galilee division in Israel. As a village that has not had any food distribution since June. When the families have finished looking at the names that are posted on those boards, they come here. This is now a memorial to the victims of the Srebrenica massacre. We're very interested to see what's going on here. Mr. President, it's a privilege to address you from Sarajevo. Do you not think that the constant flip-flops of your administration on the issue of Bosnia sets a very dangerous precedent? This is a pretty shocking picture. Would you condemn President Assad for 100,000 plus deaths? You still have huge dreams. They didn't take that away from you.
They only can shoot a body. They cannot shoot my dreams.
I wonder whether you ever think that other countries can learn from what you did. I'm sure you must be their first cycling president. Bonjour, comment ça va? Salam alaikum. Mr. President. Guten Tag. What a historic day, huh? Holy Father, you were the first person to call modern slavery and human trafficking a crime against humanity. She says yes, women are the future. Can I just address the elephant in the room? You're wearing your dark glasses. What made you be so passionate about the environment? I saw you listening to that testimony. You look pretty broken up yourself. Does love have a chance of winning?
I always believe that.
When you're feeling frazzled, you might crave something sweet, but foods high in sugar could stress your body even more by raising your blood glucose levels. So instead of a candy bar, try snacking on cashews or roasted almonds. Cashews are rich in zinc, which is linked to lowered anxiety, and almonds are a source of B vitamins, which play a role in maintaining your mood. If stress leaves you feeling tired, pass on coffee, soda, and energy drinks. Caffeine can actually increase levels of the stress hormone cortisol. So consider a calming caffeine-free herbal tea, like chamomile, passion flower, or mint. One study found tea could help lower cortisol levels. But your best defense against stress eating may not be at mealtime, but bedtime. Some studies suggest getting enough sleep makes you less likely to make unhealthy food choices when you're stressed out.
Out front tonight, a potential breakthrough in treating coronavirus.
We've gotten very little help from the federal government.
Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? One of our viewers saw you last night on the show. She says she's going to pay your rent this month. Shut up. I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse, knowing that that could put you at risk for this?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Erin Burnett out front on CNN.
The UN now saying 4 million refugees have fled Ukraine since Russia's invasion more than a month ago, but many who have remained in this besieged country are trying to help their fellow Ukrainians. Today I visited a shelter here in Lviv, put together by some young Ukrainians. It is a performance space with shops that's now housing displaced people seeking safety from Russian shelling.
This was a photo studio and TikTok room, and now it's still a shelter.
When bombs started falling on her country, 29-year-old journalist Nadia Oprashenko knew she had to act.
One day, morning 24 of February, we woke up and we understand that this war is coming all territory of Ukraine.
So everything changed?
Everything changed.
So she and her friends founded what might be Lviv's most eclectic shelter in a building she calls the Wild House. On the first floor, a coffee shop and bar along with a clothing shop. Upstairs, a performance space. All of it used to shelter evacuees when the war began.
We who are young adult who feel that he can be not just passive on this war, we decided what we can do. Oh, we have place, and we understand that a lot of people, like our friends, started to come to Lviv, and they need place to stay. Next day, we take first things that we can take from our place, like pillows, like medicine, food.
They provided housing for more than 300 people.
There was big table. You can take some tea, coffee, everything was free.
Now evacuees live here, across the hall from a barbershop. Oleg Maripura is one of those stranded here, unsure when or if he will be able to return to his home in the Donetsk region.
I have no idea. I dream about this, but it's very hard, and I think some years I need wait.
But he is grateful to have a safe place in Lviv, found through his friends.
Thanks God, thanks my friends, thanks my lucky fate for I find this place.
As the war continues, Oprasheko is working to place the displaced in an informal network of 20 small shelters across the city.
We want to give caring support and other people.
Doing good in the midst of the bad.
When people, kids, families, they're in danger, you need to do the best what you can.
Yeah.
So we did.
Nice job, Nadia. Nice job. We'll be right back.
In a special ongoing season of the Tug of War podcast, CNN reporters are on the ground in Ukraine, documenting Russia's invasion, the escalating conflict, and what it means for the rest of the world. Tug of War. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Each hall is about 10,000 square meters, as you see here.
To get more insight into the kingdom's strategy, I met up with the Minister of Industry, Commerce and Tourism at one of the country's flagship projects, the Bahrain International Exhibition and Convention Center. This massive space is said to be the region's largest exhibition center when it opens later this year.
Bahrain was already under pressure economically before the pandemic. The pandemic brought along with it a lot more pain. But the country was already on the path of trying to diversify away from oil and gas. Do you think that's actually doable?
If you talk primarily about diversification, it's not new to us. We've done it before. Before oil, we didn't have oil. We were a pearling nation. We went from pearling to oil, to industry, to banking, to telecoms. And I'm sure we'll find more and more as we go along. I think the biggest asset in Bahrain is the Bahrainis themselves.
This is an increasingly visual world. And at our core, at a core of our business, what do? We help businesses connect and compete in that visual landscape. And so whether that's small businesses and how they need to compete through our iStock brand, or whether that's corporations as they struggle to how to have a presence across TikTok and Instagram and all the platforms that they need to be present on, we see just a huge amount of demand for our service. And then with the growth of video, increasingly, being a medium in which not only the media needs to produce, but corporations and businesses need to have a video presence. That's another core driver of this business. But we see a lot of growth opportunities across Getty Images.
Today we live in an unpredictable environment and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
Our engine continues, our impetus, our momentum.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers. Give me the facts on voter fraud.
There has never been a moment where voter fraud has affected the outcome of an election.
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
Normally this theatre would be filled with people and art and debate and energy.
And so now we have to rely on the two of us.
How interesting is it to be Tyler Mitchell today? It's crucial we make sense of what's happening. There seems to be some confusion that maybe you can clear up. Where are the US forces in Syria going? And fully understand what's at stake.
What's happening now in the world is a great thing because people are talking about subjects they never did before.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
The very first Omega Speedmaster Professional was created in 1957, and it was really created for motorsports enthusiasts, but it became famous and continues to be famous as the watch that was certified for manned spaceflight by NASA.
3, 2, 1, liftoff. We have a liftoff.
A big part of the appeal is that there is no other watch that has the heritage of aerospace use that it has. It was used for the Gemini missions, it was used for the Apollo missions. It is to this day still the official watch used on the outside of the EVA suits that are provided by the Russian Space Agency for the folks up in the International Space Station. And you think about it, a watch from 1957 that was never designed for use in outer space, that has been used in manned space flight more or less continuously ever since the mid-1960s, there's just nothing else out there like it.
He's interviewed 5 U.S. presidents, authored 7 books, and has an independent voice that resonates.
What happened to when we were united against a common enemy?
He's raw, unique, and one of America's most important talk show hosts. Watch Smirconish, Saturday on CNN.
All right, this is breaking news. Comedian Chris Rock speaking out for the first time since Will Smith slapped him on stage at Sunday's Academy Awards. Rock kicking off his comedy tour in Boston tonight, saying that he's got something to say, but maybe not yet. The comedian telling the audience at an earlier performance tonight, I had written a whole show before this weekend. I'm still processing what happened. So at some point, I'll talk about that S. It'll be serious, it'll be funny, but right now I'm going to tell some jokes. At a second show just moments ago, he implied that he hasn't talked to Smith since the slap. Rock's fans telling CNN they stand behind him.
I think personally that Will Smith was kind of in the wrong. You know what I'm saying? A comedian is a comedian. Unfortunately, they say what they say.
Well, obviously the person instigating violence is in the wrong, right?
How do you think Chris Rock handled himself?
Amazing. Yeah, his reaction was consistent with what you would think a host would react.
All right, well, Will Smith now facing possible disciplinary action from the Academy. CNN's Brian Todd has more now.
The Board of Governors of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences has initiated disciplinary proceedings against actor Will Smith for violating the Academy's standards of conduct, according to a statement from the Academy. Violations which it says include inappropriate physical contact, abusive or threatening behavior, and compromising the integrity of the Academy when Smith slapped Chris Rock live at the Oscars.
That was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow.
In its statement, the Academy also apologized to Rock and said Will Smith was asked to leave the ceremony and refused. Comedian Wanda Sykes, one of the 3 co-hosts of the Oscars, broke her silence on Ellen DeGeneres' talk show.
And I just felt so awful for my friend, Chris, and it was sickening. It was absolutely, I physically felt ill, and I'm still a little traumatized by it.
Sykes' co-host, Amy Schumer, posted a statement on Instagram saying, I'm still in shock and stunned and sad. An uncensored feed from a Japanese outlet shows how Rock and Smith reacted immediately afterward.
Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
My wife's name out your mouth.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
It was a G.I. Jane joke.
Keep my wife's
G.I. Jane のジョークだったんです。
How could the Academy punish Smith?
I can see them possibly taking steps about his membership in the Academy. I mean, they could remove him from the Academy. They could take away his voting rights for future Oscar votes. They could take away his participation in other Academy events. And they could ban him from coming back next year. I think that's most likely.
What most observers don't expect is for the Academy to take away the Oscar that Smith just won for Best Actor in the movie King Richard.